Factories in China's largest manufacturing city are empty, but for reasons beyond the Chinese Communist Party or CCP virus. A 14-year-old girl is missing in China. Police forced her parents to delete missing person notices online and asked the mother to go to another province herself to ask for help to find her. According to experts, Hong Kong is set to become part of totalitarian China. This after Beijing signaled it will reform Hong Kong's independent judiciary. And 157 Chinese cities have sister city partnerships in the U.S. But is Beijing exploiting them to conduct espionage and ideological coercion? 4 senators want to find out. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Factories in China's largest manufacturing region are empty, but not just because of the CCP or Chinese Communist Party virus. People there don't seem to want to go back to work.
Factories inside China's largest manufacturing city are gradually receiving more and more work orders. They emptied out due to the pandemic, but as prevention measures lessen, workers don't seem to be returning. Dongguan City, also known as the world's factory, gets much of its work from foreign job orders. According to official figures, Dongguan's imports and exports amounted to $40 billion in 2020. That's 40% of the city's total GDP this year. Across China, more than 200 million people work in the import-export sector and related areas. The early stages of the pandemic severely reduced the city's job orders from abroad. Factories were forced to take extended vacations and some even closed down. About 75% of the city's population are migrant workers. Many employees return to their hometowns to find work. As the pandemic situation improves outside China, the factory's foreign job orders are gradually returning. But the people are not. One reason is that living expenses are lower in their hometowns. There are also some who say working as a laborer is an unstable source of income, so they started their own businesses instead of returning to factory work. One netizen posted videos showing a train station, factories, and other industrial and commercial areas in the city. Many appear deserted. According to Chinese media, finding and recruiting workers is tough for factories in Dongguan. A shoe factory there is reportedly facing serious trouble. Shoe orders began pouring in, and the production line began to pile up, but the general manager was unable to hire enough workers to keep up with demand. Reporting by Don Ma, NTD News.
Information from various channels seems to say no to Chinese Ant Group's hope of relisting. Ant Group's IPO was suspended 2 days before the scheduled date by Shanghai Stock Exchange. Its Hong Kong listing was halted at the same time. It's estimated that if listed, the total market capitalization of the Ant Group IPO may be the highest ever in the world. When asked about Ant Group's IPO this Tuesday, the vice chairman of China Securities Regulatory Commission said he didn't know the specific schedule. Beijing-based media group Caixin quoted some insiders saying it might not be that easy for Ant Group to get relisted. Those insiders also say that the expansion of the group's popular products will most likely be greatly reduced. A report from a Chinese financial media, Caizong, delivered a similar message. Chinese economy professor Liu Yuhui said in a report that China's highest regulatory body for the stock market will promote enterprises that are in line with national strategies, but Ant Group is not one of them. Ant Group's future appears uncertain following the halting of its IPO. Now, new regulations are set to deal even more blows to the company. New guidelines titled Interim Measures for the Administration of Internet Microlending Business were released earlier this month. The measures forbid interprovincial business dealings. That means the microlending companies under the Ant Group umbrella can only do business in the province they're registered in. Otherwise, they'd have to register a large number of companies in other provinces to maintain their current business model. Another directive says if microlending companies want to work with a bank to issue joint loans, the microlending company's portion will be at least 30% of the total. But currently, the Ant Group takes only less than 2%. That means Ant Group will need to replenish an estimated $15 billion in order to maintain its $275 billion joint lending scale. The last obstacle imposed by the guidelines appears to be the deadliest: profit control. The profit limit imposed by the regulation, plus the principal proportion required, have dragged Ant Group's profit down by half, meaning microlending is no longer a profitable business service for the company. Now we turn to Ant Group's head, Chinese tycoon Jack Ma. He shared a unique opinion on the relationship between enterprises and Chinese authorities. He says companies should fall in love with the regime but not get married, meaning that businesses should maintain a close relationship with the regime and enjoy benefits as a result. But they should never let the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, control them. China affairs commentator Wang Dan commented via U.S.-based outlet Radio Free Asia that Jack Ma has now fallen out of love. Dan says recent events prove that it's a mistake to fall in love with the regime. He added, in keeping with the metaphor, that Ma may now be afraid of facing a cruel lover next, meaning he'll pay for his actions. A teenage girl from southeast China has been missing for over 2 weeks. The parents posted missing person notices online, but police forced them to remove the notices, claiming it would cause negative social impact.
A missing person notice attracted the attention of netizens last Friday. A 14-year-old girl with the last name Chen disappeared on the way to school earlier this month in Shanwei City in southeast China. A monitoring camera showed Chen was abducted in a Toyota car. The license plate showed the car was from the neighboring province Jiangxi. The police determined that the car had arrived in Jiangxi province, but the girl's whereabouts was still unknown. The mother had a nervous breakdown. Chen's father told us the missing person notices were all removed by the Municipal Public Security Bureau. The police warned them that the notices they posted had already attracted 200,000 clicks and therefore caused a negative social impact. They meant the notices would leave people with the impression that society is not safe and the police are not capable. The girl's mother received a call from the police telling her to go to Jiangxi province to find her daughter.
They said they were not so sure where our daughter is in Jiangxi province, so I'm going to Jiangxi to ask the police over there for help.
Ms. He dared not speak about the police's attitude toward them for putting up the notices. According to the father, their hometown is in another province. They are migrant workers, and their daughter lived with them and attended school at 9th grade. Reporting by Xiong NTD News.
Police in Hong Kong arrested 3 former lawmakers this morning. Earlier this year, foul-smelling liquid was thrown in the city's legislature after Beijing imposed a draconian national security law on the city.
The pro-democracy former legislators Ted Hui, Ray Chan and Eddie Choi Hoi Dik confirmed their arrests on their Facebook pages. The news comes after Hong Kong's opposition lawmakers resigned en masse last week in protest against the dismissal of 4 colleagues, in a move they see as another push by Beijing to suppress democracy in the city. The walkout by the opposition means an end to one of the few forums for dissent in Hong Kong after Beijing imposed a sweeping national security law on the city. Back in June, live TV footage showed lawmakers Eddie Chu and Ray Chan rushing to the front of the chamber, splashing the reeking fluid as guards grabbed them during a debate over a controversial bill that would criminalise disrespect of China's national anthem. And in May, Ted Hui dropped a rotten plant in the middle of the meeting, which officers said disturbed the legislative proceedings and mentally disturbed the council's president. The 3 men had been charged with attempting to use harmful substances with the intent to cause harm to others. Ted Hui spoke later after he was released on bail.
Police is using public power, using criminal procedures to regulate what politicians, legislators, what they speak, what they do inside our legislature. This is ridiculous. This only shows to all Hong Kong people and to the world that this regime is a tyranny.
Opposition members have tried to take a stand against what many people see as Beijing's clampdown on Hong Kong's freedoms. Despite a promise of autonomy for 50 years, under a one country, two systems agreement after the British handover of Hong Kong to China in 1997.
On Tuesday, Zhang Xiaoming, Deputy Director of the Beijing Law Office for Hong Kong and Macau Affairs, held a speech at the forum on the 30th anniversary of the Hong Kong Basic Law. For the first time, he disclosed to the public Beijing's goal of the one country, two systems policy in Hong Kong.
Those who love China and Hong Kong govern Hong Kong. Those who oppose China and disrupt Hong Kong are out. This is a political rule under the one country, two systems policy.
Zhang added the focus of the next reform in Hong Kong is the judicial system. Hong Kong has already changed the national education system and the Legislative Council member qualification review system, according to Beijing's will. In a BBC interview, Deputy Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Institute of Public Opinion, Chong Kim-hwa, questions what it means to love the country. He said people supporting Beijing's student movement in 1989 think they are patriotic, and they want to hold authorities accountable for the massacre. But Beijing claims if you oppose the Chinese Communist Party or CCP, you are not patriotic. Beijing also bans all organizations and individuals that it dislikes. Speaking about Beijing's political rule over Hong Kong, Chung said the problem is that Beijing can constantly add new political rules. They aren't laws, so the CCP officials can interpret them at will. There's no objective criterion at all. Beijing's intent to reform Hong Kong's judicial system triggered concerns. An independent judicial system is considered an important cornerstone of Hong Kong's development as a financial center in the world. Without an independent judicial system, Hong Kong is almost no different than mainland China. A member of Biden's transition team has a history of advocating for the U.S. and China to work closely together in the scientific field. This comes despite rising concerns over national security issues. Biden and Harris announced their transition team in a press release. One name stands out. Mallet Mesfin is listed under both the Office of Science and Technology Policy and the Arts and Humanities. She was part of the Obama administration's National Security and International Affairs branch. Mesfin advocated for closer ties in an op-ed she wrote for The Hill, called Why the Nobel Prize Shows the U.S. and China Need to Work Together on Gene Editing. Mesfin blames the pandemic on tense bilateral relations instead of the communist regime. Her response is that the U.S. and China should cooperate more. It's not the first time Mesfin has expressed such views. In another op-ed for Foreign Affairs titled It Takes a World to End a Pandemic, she praised Beijing's transparency in handling the outbreak. This despite rampant evidence of the Chinese regime covering up the origin and spread of the virus. Back in China, the communist officials knew about the virus at least in early December, but hid the information for weeks. They also silenced whistleblower doctors, including Dr. Li Wenliang. Li later contracted the virus and died. The Chinese regime also arrested citizen journalists covering the outbreak and shut down the Shanghai lab that published the world's first genome sequence of the virus. The genome sequence is crucial for developing testing kits for the virus. Mesfin goes on to say these tense relations are destroying any chance of cooperation between the two countries. She calls for dialogue between non-governmental actors. This comes despite repeated efforts by the Chinese Communist Party to steal U.S. tech to advance its military and economic power in order to achieve global scientific dominance. The FBI published a report in August this year detailing how China costs the U.S. $200 billion to $600 billion annually in stolen trade secrets, counterfeit goods, and pirated software. This comes as many view a Biden administration as more likely to embrace multilateralism, citing his plan to rejoin the Paris Accord, the World Health Organization, and the Iran nuclear deal. Chinese state-run media Global Times wrote on Tuesday, while Biden might be more willing to embrace multilateralism, his voters might not. This comes as the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee released a report on Wednesday. It's to advance greater collaboration between the U.S. and Europe to counter the challenges posed by China. Such challenges include China's unfair trade practices, cybersecurity, disinformation, and the pursuit for geopolitical and technological dominance. To counter those threats, the report recommends safeguarding open societies, such as think tanks and universities, protecting the integrity of international organizations and trading systems, and expanding transatlantic cooperation. Now we turn to sister cities. A number of U.S. cities are linked to other cities and towns overseas, mainly to promote cultural exchange and commercial relationships. But 4 U.S. senators have introduced new legislation asking for more transparency surrounding sister city partnerships between the U.S. and China. Nearly 160 Chinese cities are involved. Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn says sister city partnerships could be Beijing's newest political weapon, adding that the U.S. should evaluate whether the ties could leave American communities vulnerable to foreign espionage and ideological coercion. That's as Senator Marco Rubio from Florida pointed out that the Chinese Communist Party has a history of exploiting cultural and economic partnerships to conduct malign activities. Last month, Senator Blackburn and Missouri Senator Hawley demanded answers from the U.S. Conference of Mayors regarding Chinese sister city partnerships. The conference failed to identify oversight practices for the partnerships. As a result, they proposed the new bill. Polish authorities said on Wednesday a former Secret Service agent and a Chinese citizen have been charged with spying for China. The Chinese citizen was working for Chinese telecom giant Huawei when he was arrested by Polish security services last year. He was fired from Huawei after the arrest. A statement from Poland's special services say both men carried out espionage activities to damage Polish interests. The U.S. has urged its allies to exclude Chinese companies, particularly Huawei, from roles in their 5G networks. The U.S. and Poland signed a joint declaration last year, saying suppliers of 5G network equipment should be rigorously evaluated for foreign government control. Turning to social media, Facebook suspended the account of a human rights group fighting for people in China's Xinjiang region. But after the group turned to media outlets with the story, the account seemingly reappeared. A Kazakhstani human rights group issued a statement on Sunday asking if Facebook supports China's crackdown on Xinjiang. The statement said the organization had used its Facebook account for 4 years, but explained it was suddenly suspended for no clear reason. The organization uses its Facebook account as a human rights database for storing information. Following the suspension, all the articles, testimony videos, and photos of people who had been persecuted in Xinjiang disappeared. A total of 30,000 pieces of information were lost. The organization's founder also revealed that the account included hundreds of speeches he gave on China's Belt and Road Initiative, an infrastructure investment project known to extend Beijing's overseas influence. Many of the speeches featured criticism of the initiative, which the founder says traps other countries and damages their values and freedoms. Some of them had attracted millions of views. After the Facebook account was blocked, the organization filed a complaint with the platform. A reply stated that the account could not be restored because it did not comply with Facebook's community rules. The account has since been restored following the case's media buzz. The country of Kazakhstan is located northeast of China's Xinjiang region. Hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs, member of a minority ethnic group, live there. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.